Hey, this is Brandon from Heavy Trevy, and you are watching Crash and Bleed.
Goodbye, fuck you. Can't you see that it is too late for your ass? So come take your shit back. What I do, you always kick me when I'm down. What I do, me. Yes, I know you sleep around.
So, a lot of people might know Heavy Trevy and the Not So Fat Kids from that unauthorized Blink-182 documentary called Punk Poets.
Yeah.
I think it came out in 2003. And at that time, Heavy Trevy became my third favourite band until I worked out I wasn't going to be able to get any of the music because I actually didn't experience the internet for the first time until 2018. So all I could do was rip the 5 or 6 songs that were featured on that DVD and have those on my computer in like incomplete forms. I've since downloaded Just a Taste and a couple of other songs that were floating around. In fact, Heavy Trevy was the very first band that I ever downloaded once I got on the internet. Really hard to find the music, and we'll find out why a little bit later. Firstly, we should touch on what it was like getting exposed to punk rock for the first time.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you so much for that. I had no idea. Like, this was so random. Not that I'll answer your question in a second, but so random to meet somebody in the UK that had heard of my band that I haven't been in for 20 plus years. So this is kind of an honor for me to be able to do a podcast like this. Never been asked to do anything like this. So thank you so much, Jay. So all right. So let's time warp back to like 2001, 2002. Where was the world at? What were we doing? I would have been in my late teens, early 20s at that point. So back then, this was really at the time where SoCal skate punk started becoming really popular. Blink had just come out with their third album, and they were blowing up. And these were the days of like TRL, and so a lot of I think Blink actually Blink actually gave a lot of exposure to SoCal skate punk at that time, unknowingly. And bands like Strung Out, like Lagwagon, pretty much anybody off of Fat, these bands were doing really well because all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's that sound. You know, like Seattle during the early 90s had its, sound per se with grunge. And I would say the early 2000s, the late 90s, early 2000s, pop punk in a way, and especially in SoCal, had its own sound. And so, I mean, you look at everything from the way that, the kids dress to the culture at that time, being in Southern California. I mean, growing up, when he Blink things about sombreros, like sombreros was like 10 minutes away from where I lived in Poway. And so all of that stuff kind of just meshed together. And I think it really influenced our sound and influenced us as people growing up at that time. And so, yeah, it was like, it was poppy, it was fast, it was catchy. I mean, it was all of those things that we were trying to do at the time. But more so, I mean, we had just graduated high school when we started this band. And frankly, we started as a joke because I wasn't really interested in punk rock per se. None of my singing influences were on the punk side. I grew up, my wave was very much like the grunge era and the post grunge era. The singers that came out in the early 90s, those were the guys that I really enjoyed listening to because it was just such good melody. There's a lot of I felt there was a lot of like good musicianship there, a lot of good quality on the singing side of it. And so when like the late 90s, mid to late 90s started kind of like rolling around, you got, bands like Screeching Weasel and I can't even remember like half of them now, but it was like a lot of this kind of like thrash kind of gutter punk that was coming up that was starting to get kind of popular within certain sects of, my generation, my demographic, kids that were my age. And I'll tell you right now, I wasn't into it. I thought it was terrible. And not to offend anybody, but the whole idea was that I was not a punk rock kid growing up. Like that's not what I was into. Dude, I took choir for 4 years. So I sang choir and I learned how to sing. I learned the mechanics of it for the better part of 4 years. And so when Chris, aka Heavy Trevy, started, we started hanging out and drinking together and partying together, like at the end of our high school years. And, the year after, he was like, because he was a really good songwriter. He's like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" I was like, "Yeah, but I don't sing punk. Like, it's not my thing. I don't want to sing like those guys." And so that's exactly what happened. And I think that's why it kind of worked, is that he would come up with these really poppy, melodies, these great riffs, and we would add some vigor into it, but then it was layering on some of the more of the vocally speaking, more things that were like more melody driven. Even though it was like some of the lyrics were kind of like abrasive in a way, as long as it had good melody and had good harmonies and had all of that musicianship that I had enjoyed, from my years in choir and from my years, singing, in other bands that were more like, grunge and rock driven. We took those components and we added them into Heavy Trevy. And I think that's really kind of what helped us stand out in those early days, is that it wasn't just, the skate punk. It was skate punk blended with these other genres and these other players and components. And so I think that made it kind of unique in a way, without completely, detracting from it being a pop punk band. So
So who was influential for you, since you didn't come up in that sort of skate punk world?
So I think vocally speaking, I really liked, again, my wave, I think growing up was very much kind of that late 80s, early 90s rock. And so, and it's funny, I go back and I can definitely hear the influences. So I mean, guys like Vedder, I mean, Eddie Vedder obviously was a huge influence of mine. You can hear it. We very much have the same tonality in our voices. Um, uh, Creed actually was a big influence later, kind of later down the line, when they came out with My Own Prison. And it's funny now because now I sing in a Creed tribute band called Creed United. And so, those were the guys that I enjoyed listening to, because I thought that they did a nice job of creating melody and message at the same time. And I felt like a lot of that was kind of lost and just kind of like I said, kind of like the punk scene. But it wasn't really until I heard Tony Sly from No Use for a Name, where it just the light bulb went off. I was like, holy shit, like, you don't have to sound like you're not singing and you're just screaming. You can actually layer on melody, vocal melody, and really good songwriting and harmonies and these components of music that historically were not really part of that genre. And I think that's really what made skate punk, particularly in SoCal, really unique at the time, is that all of a sudden we started seeing this blend and this mesh of like these other musical components that also added in, and that were also part of the culture and the vigor and everything else that went into making, I think, the punk scene down here really prevalent during the late 90s, early 2000s. But Tony Sly and No Use for a Name, I think, was the first like punk band that I heard, especially off of Fat, where I was like, this guy's phenomenal. This guy's an awesome singer. This guy's a great melody writer. It's just an overall really talented guy. And I'm bummed I never got a chance to meet him. But it's yeah, he was very influential in kind of me pivoting away towards kind of my early influences and into more of the punk rock scene. And so a lot of stuff that you'll hear was super that at least on my side of it was super influenced by Tony Sly, No Use for a Name. Another big influence was Jason Cruz. Jason Cruz, I was like blown away. I saw Jason Cruz and Strung Out at the Glass House in Pomona. And this is right when they released Twisted by Design. And it just blew my mind. I was like, holy shit, like, this guy's phenomenal. Just an amazing like vocalist, a great singer, outstanding lyrics. Phrasing was just like some of the best that I'd heard. And honestly, like, when I say some of the best, like, I hadn't heard of that many bands, just because I was kind of turned off by that whole genre of music earlier on. But when I started hearing those bands, and then early, I would say a little bit earlier than that was like No Effects, and hearing the harmonies and with El Jefe, and I was like, dude, this can be really good. It's not always just that thing. They can add in all of these other components and make this stuff really listenable and enjoyable. And I would say those three bands, and then particularly those singers in general, are really what kind of turned and changed my mind with how to look at punk rock. Um, and I would say those were big influences on me singing and writing, particularly when I was in my late teens and early 20s, and especially with the Heavy Trevy project. We borrowed a lot of stuff from them, at least from my side of it, because I was that's what I want to sound like when I sing. Like I want to approach this and attack this and think about the phrasing the way that Jason would do it. I want to think about melodies the way that Tony would do it. And so those are the things that really like stood out to me when I was younger, and I was just first started kind of getting into the punk rock scene.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you ever got to meet No Effects then?
I did. Well, I got to meet I got to meet Fat Mike. It was kind of a wild story, and I wish I had the photo with me, but I have a picture somewhere of Fat Mike. We saw him in Vegas. We went to the punk rock bowling tournament in Vegas because our manager at the time was friends with a lot of the guys from Fat, and I think she was friends with Mike. And so we randomly like saw him on Fremont Street, and Eric and I, our guitarist, ran over to him and was like, "Hey, can we get a picture with you?" He's like, "Sure." I mean, you know how he is, right? So we gave him the CD. He held up the CD like this, and Eric and I are just like, dude, we were so out of it. We were Vegas. It was early 20s, in our early 20s, and so I mean, I had my shirt off. I had dreadlocks, and it was just I had just gotten a Bruce Lee tattooed on my stomach. So I was like, dude, it was like just the wildest, funniest shit. But yes, I did get a chance to meet them, but it was very much it wasn't. I mean, we didn't like sit down and have a conversation or anything. We just basically mobbed him on the street and got a photo with him, and that was the extent of me ever meeting him. Unfortunately.
All right. So I usually ask all my musical guests who they think was the most iconic punk rocker of all time.
Man, I don't know. That's a hard question. When I think of punk rock, I don't necessarily think of like a band like Blink. I don't think of that genre of music. I think more so of like the probably more so towards like the early 90s, mid 90s. And I would say probably Bad Religion would be at the top of that list, followed by No Effects. That's and then probably followed by, at least for me, Strung Out, No Use for a Name. But those are probably the top three or four.
Well, is there not one person that you could point to and say that person completely and utterly embodies what punk rock is all about?
Oh, I would say Fat Mike for sure. He has lived that. I mean, I don't know the guy. I just know he is a public persona. But if I would have to say like what came over from like the 70s, like really like when kind of punk rock started in that late 70s, early 80s, and the look and the mentality and the way that the kind of those folks thought. I think Fat Mike definitely embodies that. I think he is really the epitome of punk rock and what it means to be punk rock. And I mean, again, I don't know the guy, but that's from an outsider's view, I would say, yeah, if I had to point to somebody who had never heard of punk rock before, say, just go listen to that guy. Like that's the guy I would tell them to go listen to. Greg Gafton would also be up there as well, but I probably Fat Mike more so from from probably more of a cultural standpoint. Greg is, I mean, he's an amazing singer. He's actually, I probably should have mentioned him earlier. he was also somebody that I really enjoyed listening to. I had a bunch of Bad Religion albums growing up, and I didn't even know like I didn't know like how to like connect them. Like this was back when we had like record stores and CD stores. I mean, like, you could just go in and listen to it. And a lot of times when I was like, sorry to go off on a tangent, a lot of times when I was younger, I would go there to get like an album or something, or just go to listen. And that's how I discovered Tool when a Tool came out with Opiate. And so I bought like Tool's Opiate, Bad Religion, No Control. But yeah, so sorry to kind of go off there. But yeah, Fat Mike, definitely the guy, probably more of the icon per se. But I would say Greg Gaff. I'm probably butchering his name.
Greg
But yeah,
Graffin.
Greg Graff. Thank you, Greg Graffin from Bad Religion is also there, but I think it's a totally different style than what everything else, what everybody else is doing. I think he has very much his own style of punk rock, and I think probably the way that he approaches it.
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's get into meeting the band members of Heavy Trevy. Now, since I'm probably not going to be able to talk to everyone in the band, I don't know if you could hook me up with anyone. We don't know yet. We'll find that out later. But could you give us an idea of where each of those people came from? Like, what was their background as you were meeting them?
Sure, absolutely. So I'll start with Chris, aka Heavy Trevy. So I had known Chris for the better part of my life, because he and I went to elementary school together. We were in the same kindergarten class, so we had known each other for a very long time. Our parents had known each other. I think my mom had did advertising for his dad's chiropractic business at some point. So yeah, so we went way back. Like we knew each other. We were never like good friends or anything, but we were acquaintances. We played little league together. We were always friendly. It was kind of like one of those types of friendships. Um, and Chris is a talented guy. He's very, very talented. He's a very talented songwriter, and he's a pretty good. I would say he's a pretty good singer as well. That's more of his background, and then we reconnected. I think more so in high school, and then definitely after high school once we started partying together. And I think today Chris is still writing music. He's still putting out stuff, but kind of doing it on his own time, because now we're all, I don't know, fucking 40 and old, and we got other shit to do besides music. But yeah, I mean that's kind of where he's at. And I don't want to speak too much for him, but that's kind of how we met. Jason, who was our original drummer, is now our drummer, who I've been friends with since I was like 16. He's actually the drummer for Creed United, which is that tribute that I was talking about earlier. So we still play music together, and he's doing really well. Eric Moyal, who was the guitarist, he now lives in Israel, and he was in San Diego for the better part of his life, but I think he just recently moved. I think he recently moved back to Israel. So good dude, very smart guy. We connected in high school because we had played in before starting Heavy Trevy. Eric and I played with Jason in one of their other bands for a brief period of time. And Eric is a very driven guy. He always has been. He's a very smart guy too. And so all those components I think really helped us at when we first started Heavy Trevy to have that drive, because we had these guys that were like, they're the ones that would go out there and sell CDs at gas stations for $1. That we'd go up to, we go up to people in line with our Walkmans and say, hey, listen to this. It's like, hey, do you like this? All right, do you want to give us $1 for it? So like stuff like that. So so yeah, Eric was massively influential in getting Heavy Trevy off the ground with Chris in those earlier years. And I think Eric and I have been really good friends, pretty much ever since. So, we keep in contact. He just wrote a book on Judaism. So, just released it. So, it's pretty wild, right? So I mean, where we started and where we're at now, 25 years later, it's definitely different. So I hope I'm not like deflating any
No,
any impression that you had.
no,
Dude, I don't
no.
even have tattoos, bro. So
No,
I'm
it's
about
cool,
as
man.
anti-punk rock as you can get. Yeah.
Hey, I've got no tattoos, no piercings. I don't drink. I don't take drugs. It's fine.
There you go, man. I love it. I love it.
Well, how did the band actually get its name? Because I'm going to imagine it was Chris who sort of came up with the idea, like, hey, I'm the chubby one. We should kind of name ourselves after that fact. Like, because he wasn't the lead singer, was he?
Yeah. So we got the name Heavy Trevy, and I think we just added on the not so fat kids because we thought it was funny. Because dude, at the time, like I was like half the size I was now. I was a skinny guy. I was, dude, I was right out of high school, right? So my metabolism was going 100 miles an hour. I could eat carne asada burritos, every day, all week long, and it'd have absolutely zero effect on me. But anyways, so yeah, so I was probably like 60 pounds lighter. I was a skinny little kid. And so, yeah, it just, at the time, like it all made sense and it was funny. And so that's where we got the not so fat kids from. So Chris being, his last name is Trevison. So, his nickname kind of in high school loosely was Heavy Trevy. And so that's how we got Heavy Trevy, the not so fat kids. It just kind of made sense. And sorry, what was the other question, your follow-up question?
I was just asking, like, if he was a main songwriter in that band, because it
Yeah,
was weird to me that he'd put himself in the title, like, unless he was a main songwriter.
he was. Chris really was the main songwriter. I would say Chris and Eric together, but a lot of it really originated from Chris as being the main songwriter for Heavy Trevy, especially in those early days. And Chris, to his credit, is a very good songwriter, and honestly, I think he's a good singer too. Um, so yeah, to his credit, he did write a lot of the music, or at least the foundation for a lot of the music. And then, the kind of the way it worked with us is that Chris and Eric would come up with some riffs. Chris would come up with like a vocal melody or an idea, and then the guys would show it to me, and then Jason and I would jump in, and then if I liked the melody and I felt like it was in kind of like my pocket vocally, I'd go with the melody, and if not, I would try some other things and say, hey, maybe this works, because my range and his range were a little bit different. And so, when you want things to be really, charged, you sometimes you have to sing things at different levels, in different ranges. And so that's kind of where things originated from. But a lot of the writing started and originated with Chris and Eric. And then I would come in, I would see what they wrote, I would practice with them. And then sometimes I would come up with my own parts. Sometimes I would sing Chris's parts. Sometimes Chris would be like, no, fuck you, I want to sing that part. And so he would sing that part, and then I would sing something else. And so it was a very tumultuous writing process for the most part. But I think the end product ended up being pretty good after working through all the nonsense and stuff. But that's kind of how we approach songwriting.
Well, okay, so there's a band bio in a couple of different websites, and it's all just copy
Uh-huh.
pasted. It's like the same band bio, like everywhere you look.
Yeah.
So this was the year 2000 the band started, or possibly 99?
And technically, it would have been, I think, 2001 is when we released our first little EP. Maybe the end of 2000, because we graduated high school in 2000, and we didn't start Heavy Trevy until the following summer, and that's when it blew up, because we were playing house parties, because a lot of us didn't go out and didn't go to out of state colleges or out of the city colleges. A lot of us just stayed home and went to community college, in the area. And there was a big group of us from Poway that did that. And so because of that, like everyone was home, everyone's in their late teens, they're not in high school anymore. So we wanted to go out and drink and party and have fun. That's kind of around the time that it started, was more so probably 2001. But Chris had already been playing with a couple other guys, and it wasn't necessarily a Heavy Trevy at that point, but it was kind of the start of that whole project. So yeah, that's pretty much how it went down.
Yeah, so there's quite a lot of Heavy Trevy songs that I've never heard, and there's some debate over what the first Heavy Trevy song was. So some people are saying that it was a song called Start Over.
Gosh, what was the first Heavy Trevy song? The first Heavy Trevy song I think I ever sang was either Don't Complain or, God, I don't even remember what the name of the song is. That's the problem. But it would have been off our first Blue EP, which came out I think 2001. I don't remember the song Start Over. Sorry, it's been so long.
Was that the demo, that EP that you're talking about?
Yeah, we recorded that in some guy's bedroom. And that guy was such a douchebag. But yeah, we recorded it in his bedroom, and it was a 5-song EP, and then we ended up recording. So we recorded the first 5 songs and got that out to all of our friends. Nothing Like You. That was the one. So Nothing Like You opened with the bass riff, and then the vocals laid on top of that. And so that song in particular, that was, I think, probably our first glimpse of seeing what it was, how people responded to the Heavy Trevy sound, because it was really fast. It was upbeat, good vocals, or at least like melodic vocals on a lot of parts. Big kind of like big note at the end. Very very reminiscent of like a Tool. Again, I borrowed a lot of stuff from outside of punk rock, but that song took off, particularly amongst like more of like the bros and the jocks and all of our friends that were like in that kind of those cliques and those circles of friends. And shortly after that, we went into the studio, and at Exum Studio, we recorded a song called Later. And Later was the song that really kind of launched us locally, and then got us a lot of attention from labels and from management and stuff like that.
Yeah. So when I was looking up all this early information, I found like a 10-song demo. So
Okay.
There was never a 10-song demo.
Dude, there was so much. There was never a 10-song demo. What it was is that we were young and poor, and so anytime we had written a song or written a couple of songs that we thought we wanted to record, it was like, all right, let's scrape up enough money and go into the studio. This is the new demo. This is the new EP. And so we had done that so many times, though, over the course of like 18 months, that it almost felt like we had like a 10-song album or something. But really, it's just a collection of these like demos recorded at these various studios. And that's what it was, is us not having the money to go record properly, like a full length, body of work on an album. And it's just like, hey, we've got $500. Let's go see Scott Exum at Exum Studios and go record a new song. Bands like Unwritten Law, had recorded there. Agent 51, Pivot from Poway, that Blink recorded their Enema of the State demo at the same studio. So it was kind of like that's really where we were at, and it was primarily because we didn't have any money. We were kids, we could afford burritos and gas money and partying, but we couldn't afford studio time. so it was never a 10-song length album or anything like that. It was just basically a collection of a bunch of different demos recorded at a bunch of different studios.
Yeah. Well, I've only heard probably 10 songs, and the 8 songs that I have on my computer, they're all great songs, but there's that song Michelle that ended up in the Blink documentary later. That's not the complete song, is it? I think there's a little bit of it missing. Maybe the intro is missing, or the outro.
It changed, dude. It changed. So, what you hear, I think, in the Blink, in the Blink documentary, was a different version than how it ended up getting recorded. I think on the Just the Taste. So you're right. It changed a little bit, and it changed because when we met and we worked with this producer Rob out of LA, he's like, "Hey, look, this section of the song is probably this is your hook, right? This is the most powerful part of the song. We need to put that up front." And so things kind of changed a little bit from a structural standpoint at that point because we thought it was stronger to put certain parts, just basically to rearrange certain parts, to cut out certain parts. And so Michelle was one of those songs that did get a little bit of rework, I think, through its from the time that we first recorded to the time it ended up on Just a Taste.
Yeah. Well, see, you say that, but I know Michelle isn't on Just a Taste. There's only 3 songs on Just a Taste. There's Later,
Oh, you're
Keys,
right. Yes.
and Save the Best for Last.
Oh, you're right.
So where did Michelle end up?
I think. Oh, no, you know what it was? I'm sorry, I'm getting my studios mixed up. There are 2 versions of Michelle. The first version was recorded with the original members, and we recorded that at Scott Exum Studio, and that was a different structure to that song. We started working with fast forward about 6 months, and we met a former Elektra Records and MCA Records executive who took a liking to us and wanted us to work with one of his producers. And so his producer said, "Hey, we changed up some of the song." So Michelle was re-recorded. It did wind up on Just a Taste because, again, these were just basically a collection of demos and EPs. That's a lot of what we did. And so that song was re-recorded in LA. And so you would hear 2 different versions of it. The first one was Scott Exum in San Diego. That was the original version that you hear. And then the second version, I don't want to say it, but the second version was recorded in LA. And that's probably the one that you're more familiar with. But I think the one that ended up on the Blink, you know what? I don't even know which one ended up on the Blink documentary.
It sounds early. It does sound early and rough.
Yeah, it may have been Scott Exum's version that ended up on the Blink documentary.
So that annoys me then because I had to pull that song off that DVD, so I don't have the complete song, I don't think. Can you help me with that? Is there a way you can send it to me? Do you have those early recordings?
Yeah, man. Let me. Yes, I will find a way to get them to you. I think they've been digitized. I think Eric. I caught up with Eric a couple years ago, and I think he had converted the entire catalog of Heavy Trevy songs. Let me reach out to him and see if I can get you some songs. Because I'm sure we've got them. I've got CDs of them, in my little memorabilia box. But yeah.
Literally, I just have the 8 songs on my computer. I've got Worthless Chris twice, and they're both various bad sounding digital. It's horrible. When you can hear the fuzziness and the crackliness. It's horrible.
All the pops. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no. But yeah, I would die to get those songs. That'd be incredible.
Okay. Yeah, man, absolutely. I'd be happy to find those for you. I'm pretty sure Eric has them, and he just texted me the other day, so I'll reach out to him and see if we can get some copies of them.
Yeah, thank you, man. That would be so awesome. But yeah, the demo, apparently, whichever the fuck demo the internet is talking about, the demo sold 2,000 copies. Is that just from like the merch table at shows, or?
Some of it, yeah, some of it was from selling CDs at shows. Um, we never were picked up by a distributor. We never were picked up by a label, like officially. Um, and so a lot of the early albums that made it out, and this dude, you got to remember, this was like pre-Spotify, like almost pre-internet. Like this is back when we had like fucking dial-up, right? So this is like way back then, and so CDs were still a thing. And so when I was talking about earlier of us selling CDs at gas stations, that's what we did. We would go buy a stack. We would buy a stack of CDs that you could get at Fry's Electronics. We would go home and burn our master onto these CDs. We would get we would buy the CD inserts, the jackets or whatever, and cut out a bunch of the like the original, like we would cut out a bunch of those things and put it and we'd do it all ourselves. And then we go sell it for $1 at the gas station. Or we go to a show if we knew like there was we went to a No Use for a Name show and sold a bunch of CDs as people are waiting outside to go see No Use for a Name. Did the same thing with Yellow Card. It was that's what we did, man. We hustled and we would sell CDs anywhere and everywhere. It's like, hey, we're hungry. Okay, well, what do we have? Well, let's go sell some CDs and we'll get some lunch. That was the mentality. And so we really we worked really hard to get the music out there. And we did everything we could to sell this stuff. So yeah, 2,000 CDs is probably a little bit low of a number. It's probably more than that. If I think about the whole time. And then, that's I would say those first few demos, that's what we had to do. And then I think later, once we met up with Brian and ICAM, which was the management company and marketing company that we were working with, they actually bought us. It was so nice. It was like a huge relief. They bought us the Just the Taste production. And so we had the CD with the jacket and all the artwork, all that stuff was done for us. So we had this really nice, package that we could actually give away now. And so we were giving stuff away, we were selling stuff. So yeah. So I would say 2000 is probably a little bit on the low side. If we're being realistic about it, it was probably a lot more than that. And a lot of it was just the 4 or 5 of us just working it, man, just out there selling it, getting out to our friends, getting out to random people. But that was the mentality. I mean, that was just how we were. We were aggressive and we were driven, and we didn't have anything to lose at that point. So we could be as obnoxious as we wanted, and all it did is just add to the reputation. And for us, that was totally okay.
Well, okay, so in that Blink doc, we get an early version of Later and Keys. Were
Yeah.
those songs written by Chris?
Some of it was written by Chris, yes. Chris, okay, so with Keys, Chris wrote like 99% of it. I'm gonna give him credit for that. He did the majority of the writing, if not near, I would say almost all of the writing, except for my parts. Some of my parts. But yes, he did the majority of the writing on those 2 songs, and he did a lot of the verses. He did. I think he sang the verses on the original recording for Keys. And then later was a song that went through a couple different transitions when we first started writing it. And Eric, really, I think the writers on that one were Eric, Chris, and myself. Because it kind of changed and it morphed, and we started to, so I would say the 3 writers in that one were Chris, Eric, and myself. For Later, Chris mostly Keys. The caveat to that is the pre-choruses. So the pre-chorus is Chris didn't write, or are you somewhere inside you, that part. Um, so that's something I came up with as we were playing it out. Because a lot of times when you're writing, it's like you're singing, particularly if Chris wrote a lot of stuff on his bass. So it wasn't even on guitar that he wrote a lot of these songs, it was on his bass. And so once you add the guitar, you've got a different level, like basically like kind of a different octave level and different, component of it that's starting to get layered. And so if your vocals are too in kind of a mid range, it almost, you lose a little bit of the vocal presence. And so I wanted something really to hit during the when we came in with the heavier distortion part and keys. And so that's when I came in with my part, and that's when I enter on the singing side of it. So that's kind of how that whole thing kind of evolved, is that I came on the pre-chorus, and then I sang, I think the second, then I think I sang the second and third chorus. I think that's how it worked. And then that was the original version. And then I think when we re-recorded it, I think in LA with Brian, Adam, and Mike, that it, I obviously I sing the whole thing because Chris wasn't in the band at that point. But for later, later was definitely the three of us, Eric, Chris, and I. And kind of a funny story about that song is that when we were writing, like actually writing the lyrics to that song, like we had the hook, right? The goodbye, fuck you. We had that hook. We thought it was a good hook. It was a strong hook. But we didn't have a bridge. And at the time, A Perfect Circle had just come out with Mere to Gnome. And I was like, I'm a huge Maynard fan. He's probably one of the greatest singers of our lifetime. And Eric and I were listening to one of their like live recordings. And in that live recording, Maynard said something to the extent of, if it sounds like I'm bitter, it's because I am. And so we took that and I put some melody to it, and we added that into the song later. And so that bridge that you hear is actually was inspired probably more so by Maynard than anything else. So again, kind of blending those influences outside of punk rock, and that's why I think it worked.
Yeah. Well, okay, so before Just a Taste, and we'll get out of these very early years in a moment, just for like my own sanity, like before Just a Taste was recorded, those later Save the Best for Last and Keys, how many songs would you estimate were recorded before then?
Oh, before Just a Taste?
Yeah.
Probably somewhere between eight to 10 songs. Yeah, we had recorded a song called Katie. We had recorded. Did you ever get the? Did you ever hear the song All But Through?
What does it go like? It might be in the Blink doc.
This was another song that we had recorded, kind of another like demo thing at Scott Exum. I think it was right around the time we recorded our first version of Later. I'm butchering it, but yeah. I think I've got a copy of it, and I'll include that. I'll send it to you. But yeah, that song in particular, All But Through, I think was featured in a magazine or something like that. I don't know. It was such a crazy time. Like half the stuff, like some of the stuff I wasn't even involved with. It's just like the guys would tell me like, hey, this happened. Like, okay, cool. Like that.
Well, okay, so why is it all hard? Why is it all so hard to find now? It's like been erased from the internet, basically.
Some of it was just never uploaded. So what's crazy is that fans and later became friends took some of that stuff and they put it on YouTube. And so a lot of the stuff that I have or at least that I remember having, is all now on YouTube. But I would say there's probably, gosh, man, there's probably at least 6 or 7 songs that were never put online or put on YouTube or just have never been heard. Um, so yeah, I would say probably at least, gosh, before the Just the Taste, probably around a dozen songs or so. I mean, there's songs that we had written too that were never recorded, which is kind of a bummer. But this was back in the day. Like, if we wanted to demo something, we literally got a boombox with a cassette player, and we put it into different spots of Chris's bedroom and just hit record. And we're like, okay, well, we got to see how this thing sounds. And so that's kind of where a lot of this stuff ended up going.
Yeah. Well, my little friend who helped hook us up together, that kid Cade-tastic, I had him working with me, searching through every song that we could possibly find. So you've named a couple that we had never heard of. So which one was that song that was like, I'm sick of all this pointless aggravation? Do you remember that one?
Yeah, that's called Wake Up.
Yeah.
That song was called Wake Up. Yes. That was written and recorded with Scott. That was written and recorded in LA with Rob, with the original members of Heavy Trevy. And we wrote the lyrics to that song the morning before we recorded it.
And how would you describe the songwriting style of the band back then? Because that's kind of a little bit juvenile, that one.
It was super juvenile. It totally was. When Chris was in the band, he would do the majority of that early writing. But there were also times when Eric showed me things, or Chris showed me things like riffs, and I would just start singing, and I would just start putting vocals on top of whatever it was, and we'd work through it. So a lot of it was just kind of like trial and error, which I think it's just pretty common. And then some of it was just, Chris starting, Eric would jump onto that, add his flair to it, and then those guys would show me, and then show me and show Jason. And if you're, I would say, for a lot of singers actually sing not necessarily to the riffs, they sing to the drums. And so it was really important for me to hear what Jason was doing, because we have to have the right continuity between vocal rhythms and phrasing and melody, and how that aligns with the drums. There's a really interesting, like, unspoken relationship between the singer and a drummer, what a lot of people, I don't think, really recognize its importance, but it's super important, because if your melody is in a different rhythm that doesn't flow with your drums, it's going to sound terrible. So Chris and Eric would come up with these riffs. Jason and I would hear it. I would kind of listen to what Jason was doing and kind of getting the cues in terms of like what the rhythm was. What is he pushing back on? Is he doing punk beat? Is he doing halftime? Is he doing straight rock beat? What is he playing to? How is he interpreting the riff? And then I would come in on top of that and just start layering vocals and kind of just making things pretty, for the most part. That's kind of that was my role. Unless I heard something where I was like, without the drums and just the riff, I'm like, oh, I've got something for that, which did happen a couple times.
Yeah. Well, okay, so at what point did the Blink documentary reach out to you? Because Chris was still in the band at that time.
Yes. So we had gotten a call. I think they had reached out. Yeah, we had gotten a call from somebody in the UK. Again, dude, it was so loose. It's like I show up to practice one day and Eric tells me, yeah, like, we got this like crazy call from these like production company out of the UK that want us to be, want to film us and interview us for this documentary. I'm like, okay, that was it. It's like, okay, cool. And so what we did is we had a show. So where that whole scene took place, where we got interviewed, was at a venue called Canes, which was in Mission Beach. And Canes is no longer there; they closed down. But Canes in Mission Beach was the same venue where we would sell CDs at out in front of. But it was also a fantastic venue, and it was an all ages venue. And so that's where we did the interview. And I'll be honest with you, dude. I didn't know all the details. And I did that interview with two guys that love to talk. And they're both Chris and Eric they've got super good like on camera personalities, for the most part. And so I didn't really ever have to say much. So for the most part, I was just kind of this quiet kid that I think I may have said 10 words throughout that entire
You
interview.
did not.
Those,
You did not say a single thing. I watched it recently. You don't say a single thing unless they cut it out. Unless there's a
I
different
think they
version.
did. Yeah,
You don't say anything.
I'm sure they did. Yeah, I'm not surprised, but those guys, but that's how they were. That's very much how they were. That was their personality. And I mean, and they're bright guys. They're articulate and they're smart and they knew the scene really, really well. And so I mean, I never had any issues with with that stuff. But yeah, that's how it went down. So they flew out here, they filmed us. I think there was like one or two other bands in San Diego. I think they were also interviewing at the same time. But yeah, for the most part, it was just like it was like a 20-minute thing. Like it didn't take, like, the interview was not that long. And at that exact moment, the only thing that I had in my mind was I've got a show that night. So I'm not even thinking about the interview. I'm thinking about the show and what we're gonna do and like just all the stuff, pretty much everything that goes in your head before you go out and perform. And luckily, Chris and Eric, kind of took the reins on talking about the early punk scene, which I'm glad they did, because again, at that time, like, dude, that was not my wave. I didn't know it as well as Chris and Eric did. I was not a huge Blink fan, and I hate to say that, but that's when I was at that point in my music life. I wasn't, that stuff wasn't of interest to me. That genre of music would just not like it. Just I didn't like it, to be totally honest with you. Sorry to kind of go off on a tangent, but I got two demos when I was in middle school. The first was Unwritten Law's Blue Room. And then I also got Cheshire Cat. It was a demo of Cheshire Cat. It was a bootleg that somebody had ripped on a cassette tape and then ripped for me. And then, so when I heard Tom's vocals is just like right in that first album, it's like you can hear the Screeching Weasel, vocals. You can hear the stuff that's like, dude, I don't want to listen to this shit. Like, this is not like good quality singing to me. But I mean, that's what I thought, right? I know everyone's gonna say, "Oh, you didn't recognize." No. It's just how I was. It's what my mindset was at that time. It didn't really appeal to me. That style of music didn't appeal to me, with the exception of Unwritten Law. Unwritten Law, Scott understood melody. He understood songwriting, and he was really good at it. And on top of that, he had an incredible voice, or he has an incredible voice. So, but both those bands were in Poway. And so, like, for me, it was like, I know of those two bands. I don't know really much any outside of that, because I hadn't really been, at that point, I hadn't really been turned on to much of the Fat Records catalog and the bands there. So I hadn't really discovered No Use for a Name. I'll be, to Chris's credit, Chris is actually the one that really introduced me to that whole genre of music. Eric was a huge Blink fan. He was a huge Blink fan, so he knew everything about Blink. I didn't know anything about Blink, besides going to school with Tom's sister. Like, I didn't, like, there was no connection there, right? So, and I didn't give a shit. So, because I didn't think they were very good. I mean, I'll just say it. At the time, I just didn't think they were very good. I thought Unwritten Law was a way better band back then off those, that first album. But in Scott's words, they became the Beatles, effectively, of that genre. But anyway, so yeah, in the interview, Chris and Eric did all the talking because they understood the scene. They knew what was going on. They had really good answers to the interviewers' questions. And so I just sat there and just listened, and I just probably zoned out at the time. But yeah, that was the extent of it.
Yeah. Well, just on the subject of Blink, then, I think in 2003, when they changed their sound, it became really unlistenable. So I'm not really a modern Blink fan. I choose Heavy Trevy over anything Blink have recorded since 2001.
That's a huge compliment. Thank you for that. Dude, that's not that I wow. That's a really huge compliment. Thank you. Um, yeah, it's interesting because yeah, it did go through. I think they went through their phases, and rightfully so. When you start adding different players into the sound, it's not going to be the same sound. Like no matter how hard you try, it's never going to be the same sound. And I think when Scott left or got kicked out or whatever, and they got Travis, like that totally changed their sound. Number one, Travis is like probably one of the most iconic drummers in punk rock and in pop punk. I can't think of a more iconic drummer than him. What's kind of interesting too is that I listened to an interview with Tom, and he was explaining it really well. It's like you got to realize, like when Travis came in, when you're playing live, like 60% of what you hear coming through the PA speakers, it's not the guitar, not the vocals, the drums. Everything is mic'd on the drums, and it's all coming through the PA. And so that's what you hear that drum sound. And so I think the other components of their band started complementing what Travis was bringing and just how much of a talent he was, and they reworked their sound around, I think, his talent, to be honest with you. But that's just my 2 cents on that. But yeah, Eric and our band, huge Blink fan, both pre and post Travis. Chris was like way into everything Fat Records. Like he loved all the Screeching Weasel stuff. He loved that gutter punk. He loved thrash punk. He loved everything off of Fat and off of who's the other big label that was out here?
Epitaph, maybe.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you, Epitaph. And it was weird because it was like, and that I would like do like the mid 90s, the late 90s, and even in early 2000s, punk rock, it's so shifted, and like getting good singers. Like I met Tim from Rise Against when I was like 19 or 20 years old, and they had just come out with the Unraveling album, and one of the songs that I first heard was or maybe it was one of the second ones I heard. It was Black Mass and Gasoline. I was like, this is one of the greatest punk songs I have ever heard in my life. Number one, Tim, like his voice and his talent is just like off the charts, in my opinion. I think he's just a phenomenal singer. And he was like one of the nicest dudes when I met him. And he was a kid. I mean, he was in his early 20s back when I was like in my late teens. So anyways, I know I'm probably going off talking way too much. But sorry. It's just like you have unlocked like this box of memories, and all of a sudden I am just barfing out everything that is in my brain right now. That is even like remotely, because dude, it's not like I'm an accountant, bro. Like I don't talk about this stuff on a day-to-day basis. But now that you brought up these things, it's like, oh man, I'm like reliving and just thinking about this stuff. But yeah, no, to Chris's credit, going back to what I was saying earlier, is like very much to Chris's credit. Chris is the one that turned me on to No Use for a Name. Chris is the one that turned me on to Strung Out. Chris is the one that turned me on to Rise Against. Chris is the one that really turned me on to bands where it's like, hey, it doesn't have to be shitty vocals. It can still be like really awesome, intense punk rock music with melody. And that's, for me, that was really inspiring. Here's a funny story. My buddy was walking through Walmart and called me. It's like, hey, I just walked past the TV and I'm pretty sure I just heard your song on the TV. I was like, where are you at? He's like, I'm at Walmart. Fucking Walmart. What are you doing? What are you talking about? So I don't remember doing anything for a TV show. And he's like, I don't know, man, but I'm pretty sure that was you. I was like, dude, that wasn't us. And then lo and behold, it's the Blink documentary. And I'm like, okay, well, I saw a clip of it online on YouTube like years ago. I was like, oh shit, yeah. I guess I'm in this documentary.
Well, okay, so
yeah.
in that interview, I assumed you weren't talking much because maybe you were falling out with Chris. At that time, were things getting rocky around that era?
Oh, dude, things were always rocky with those guys. It was always like, it was so like extreme from one end to the other. Like one day you love the guy, and the next day you're like, I fucking hate this guy, you know? And so it wasn't, I think during the interview, it wasn't so much like I was unhappy or I just didn't want to talk because I was at odds with either one of them. I think they just both enjoyed being in front of the camera and talking. That I was like, that's cool. I'll do my Kurt Cobain thing and pretend like I don't give a shit and just sit here quietly. So that's exactly what happened. And so yeah, I didn't say much. It wasn't because I was upset or because we were fighting. It was just because like, no, you guys can have the screen time. I really don't care.
So Jason got kicked out of the band first?
I think Jason left. I'll give Jason credit for this. Jason left because he was tired of all the fighting. Like, because it got so bad. It got so bad. And Jason was just like, he was so over it, I think, by that point. And I don't want to speak for him and where his mindset was. And I did tell him about the interview. I was like, dude, you would not believe, because I just saw him the other week and I was like, dude, you're not going to believe this. So like, I'm going to do an interview with this guy, this podcast from this guy from the UK about Heavy Trevy. And he's like, what? so I'll definitely, I'll get you connected with Jason, and Chris and Eric. And yeah, that would be, yeah, I think you'd enjoy that interview because Jason's been in the scene for so long and he's a phenomenal talent. He's a very good drummer. Probably one of the best I've ever played with. So, but no, Jason left on his own accord. It was primarily because of personality differences and, you know, just stupid stuff. And then, yeah, Chris, you know, I don't want to be, I want to be sensitive to this, but yeah, Chris, it was not a good relationship at that point. And so Eric and I parted ways with Chris and we kept the name and then just replaced those two positions with two other guys that we knew of. And that was Adam and Mike. And both Adam and Mike are just also phenomenal talents and very good in their own right. So was very happy I think we found some really good guys to play with after that. And we didn't have to deal with a lot of the fighting. I mean, because there were times where it was like, it almost came to blows, or it may have came to blows, or it just wasn't healthy. And so it was just so taxing morally to be, you know, in a room trying to write music and do something creative and collaboratively with people that are like, you know, it almost seemed like, you know, some of these guys are just like bipolar. It's like you loved them 1 minute, hated them the next minute. They thought the same thing of you, you know, me, you know, and Eric and so on and so forth. So it just wasn't healthy. And so when we got Mike and Adam, that whole dynamic changed and it was way more collaborative. We'd already, like, at that point, Heavy Trevy, the name, had already seen some success. And we were starting to ramp up relationships with labels and with management. And so we kind of, I think we tried out a few different guys, and we ended up landing on Adam. Excuse me. And Adam he's just a good guy, a good songwriter, and at that time, you know, just the right fit. And the hardest part was actually finding a drummer to replace Jason, because Jason's a phenomenal drummer. And we ended up going. Eric and I went to the Music Institute in LA, and they have, we called them like drummer incubators, because you would go into like these little studios and they have a drum setup, and it was only about the studios were only big enough to put drums in, like drums and a person in, because it's MI. And so I mean they're not there, in those studios, whatever. But so we went through and we auditioned probably half a dozen drummers before we found Mike. And Mike was a good fit, because Mike was an outstanding drummer, and he was a referral from another band that we had known. So luckily we found good replacements, and those are the guys that we recorded Just a Taste with. So that's the connection there with those guys. But I would say Chris and Jason left in the early 2000s, probably like 2002, 2003, and Adam and Mike joined us and were with us for a couple years. And then and then things just broke out after that.
Well, I was actually able to access the old Heavy Trevy website. This guy that I talked to on Discord, his name's Danny. He taught me about this Wayback Machine, so you can access, inactive websites and stuff. So I actually read everything about what was going on with the band at the time and why Chris, what happened with Chris. So I actually do know that story. But then I think you wrote a song called "Fuck You, Heavy Trevy." Was that "Fuck You" to Chris or "Fuck You" to the band?
Yeah, no, it was a fuck you to Chris for sure.
Yeah.
Well, the way that the whole thing came about is, so I wrote a big chunk of the music to that, and I also wrote the vocal melodies and the lyrics and all that stuff. Eric and I actually we did I think we did the lyrics together, but it was so after Heavy Trevy disbanded, I think Eric was gonna get sued by Chris's dad because we retained the name. And so there was like it was not an amicable breakup by any means. There was a lot of butthurt, I think, on Chris's side. And, once he started getting like attorneys involved and things kind of started like ramping up. And mind you, like we were still nobody. Like even selling a couple thousand CDs, it's like you're still nobody. And so it didn't seem like it wasn't the right response. But it was more so, I think, just kind of a scare tactic. But it was in the big scheme of things, it was just annoying. And so Eric told me about it, and we had the song. Basically, we had the song that I had written, and hugely influenced by No Use for a Name. You can definitely hear that, I think, in the music. And so we wrote that song, "Fuck You, Heavy Trevy." It was a great song. I love that song. I still love singing that song. Just because I like, not because of the message, but more so because it's I like the melody and I like the music to it. But that's why that song was written. It was a middle finger to Chris and pretty much all the bullshit that we had to deal with him over the course of like a 3-year period, which was a lot of bullshit. I'm not going to discount that at all. There were some great times, awesome memories. Wouldn't change anything. But it was a lot to deal with, I think, in our lives. And we were pretty pissed off about it. I would say, and frankly, if you go back and you listen to a lot of our lyrics and a lot of our music, dude, it's angry. Like it is spiteful. It is angry. It is vengeful. It is not, these aren't Blink lyrics. If you go back and you listen to a song like Later or Michelle or Fuck You, Heavy Trevy, these are pretty dark songs, even though they're layered on top of really poppy music. And I think a lot of that came from just me being unhappy, and a big part of like that point in my life. And I think we were kind of all, I don't know, at that time, like Eric wasn't living at home. He was actually living in Chris's closet that he called the West Wing. And I think Chris was having some struggles at that time. So the three of us in particular, we were just not in a very good, healthy headspace. And on top of that, we were drinking every day, partying every day. And so it just, all of it was just very, yeah, if you go back and you look at you actually read the lyrics, it's a lot of anger. And it's usually a lot of anger directed at certain people or certain situations. So I think that's what it's worth.
Okay, well, so just before we get out of these early years, then there is a song that me and Cade Tastic, we can't work out if it's actually Heavy Trevy. If it is, it's Chris singing. It's that song that goes, "Oh shit, I slept with a fat chick" at the end. Is that Heavy Trevy?
Yeah, that's Heavy Trevy.
What song is that called?
It's called Pink Elephant.
Okay. And it's not like a 30-second song, is it? There's got to be like more to it, or that's just that.
It's a 30-second song. It's a joke song. It's a full-on joke song.
Well, that clears that up. That was the whole reason for doing this podcast, was to clear that up.
We're so glad we interviewed you. I just wanted to know about the Pink Elephant song.
Oh shit, I slept with the fat chick.
On the now inactive Heavy Trevy website, you guys announced that you'd be recording an album in 2002. I guess that's what fragmented into Just a Taste.
Correct. Yep.
Right. So what was it about those three songs? Like, Later was the most downloaded song on mp3.com in 2002. I think that's a fact.
It's a what? It was what?
The most downloaded song in 2002 off mp3.com.
Like on our page, you mean?
No, on mp3.com.
What?
That's what I hear. It was the most downloaded song.
Wow. Okay. I had no idea.
All right, so
that's awesome. Hey, if that's true, dude, that kicks ass. So Later was the most downloaded song on mp3.com.
That's what the internet says. Yeah.
Holy shit, dude! I gotta check that out. Okay, that's crazy. I had no idea. Thank you. I had zero idea that any of that had gone down. You got to remember too, dude. Once all this stuff got uploaded, like when I was out, dude, I was out. Like I didn't care about any of this stuff, and so like that, I don't know. That blows my mind. I had no idea. That's pretty cool though. Yeah. So going back to that, we had enough songs to do an album at that point, but Chris, it was such a weird timing because Chris and Jason had just left and we had just got new players. And right at that time, we had just met a guy by the name of Brian Newberry, and Brian Newberry became our manager. And we were like, hey, by the way, we just kicked out half the band, or half the band just quit or left or whatever. And we got a new players, and that didn't spook him. That didn't, he didn't run away from the project. I think he still believed in it because he really liked. In fact, to Eric's credit, Eric is the one I think that ended up giving Brian Newberry our demo that we had just recorded in LA with Rob and Ed Eckstein. He knew how to take our music and leverage it with what he was already doing, I think, with his business. And so I think a lot of it made sense. And this was, he had a lot of good relationships at some of the labels, particularly with Capitol Records. Because you gotta to kind of step back. Up until that time, you get a lot of when you start to see a little bit of success, all of a sudden these you get people that kind of come out of the woodwork, and they're like, hey, I can help you. Like, hey, I've got this guy, or hey, I'm part of this agency, or hey, it's like, and you got people starting to approach you. And we just had so many bad experiences with working with people that were coming to us instead of us, going to specific people that we knew that we wanted to work with, that, Brian was like kind of a breath of fresh air. It's like, hey, this guy's the real deal. Like, this guy's going to help us out. This guy's got the resources and the backing to get us where we want to be. And Brian's the reason that we recorded Just the Taste. They financed it, and they were just massively supportive of us as songwriters and as a band and individually. And so very, very thankful for that. And honestly, I was thankful that we met him at the time that we did, because I think once we got Adam and Mike and Heavy Trevy, the dynamic of the band and the personalities changed. And I think it was an overall massive positive change. And so, it was almost like starting fresh in a way. So yeah, I was very happy about that. I was very happy about the timing.
Yeah, well, I mean, so you had Save the Best for Last on there. What was the reason for bringing Keys back? Because that just sounds like a personal song that Chris wrote about his dad, maybe.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it was. So Chris had written that song. I think he was going through some stuff, and I think he just wanted to get some stuff off his chest. A lot of times too, when you're songwriting, you start kind of tapping into, I don't say like subconscious, but you start tapping in, like when you're just thinking of stuff and you sing stuff without thinking of it, you're tapping into something. You don't know what it is. And I think that's what happened with Keys. Is I think Chris kind of tapped into something, and musically speaking, it was good. It was really good. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I saw the potential in the song Keys. And we brought back Keys because it was a strong song. And even though it was, it wasn't written by me or for anybody in my family or anything like that, it still, I think, resonated with a lot of people. I think I did remember talking to fans that, kind of shared experiences, and their connection to that song. So to Chris's credit, he wrote a brilliant song. It's a beautiful song. Unfortunately he wasn't there to record it, but it was one of those songs that it was really strong, and it really kind of stood. And honestly, it was a good second song in the lineup to Just a Taste, because we opened with Later, and then we went into Keys, and then we had Save the Best for Last, right? Isn't that the three? Yeah.
Not that I have a copy of it, so if you have one there that you could maybe send to me, that would be great as well.
I would love to. I've got a ton of them. I've got a ton of extra copies, so I will definitely send one to you.
Oh, that's amazing. Who was on the cover? Who's that kid on the cover?
Dude, I have no idea. That Brian's company handled all that stuff. But I think, who was it? I think Eric told me that same photo was like on a billboard somewhere, like back east in the US. So I don't know if it was like a generic stock photo or something, but it fit perfectly. So whoever came up with it, it was great. I think the only thing, funny enough, the only thing that we didn't like about that whole thing was that they made the CD pink. And we're like, bro. Yeah. I was like, bro, you made it pink? So whatever. It's, it is what it is. But yeah, that's I have no idea who the kid is. I don't know. I don't even know who made the artwork for it. I never met them. So it was just like, hey, it showed up one day. It's like, hey, here you go. It's done for you. It's like, well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Do we know how many copies there are of it?
I want to say Brian made 5,000. I think that was the initial run, was 5,000. And a lot of those made their way out to, people in SoCal. A lot of them made them out to their way to, record companies and booking agencies, and just this was back in the day where you didn't have a Spotify, you didn't have a really even this was like pre-Facebook, so you didn't really have anything, and so sending out CDs and physical copy was how you got a conversation going about your band. And so, yeah, to Brian's credit, yeah, he produced I think around 5,000, and we got a lot of those sent out to just anybody to kind of like get the machine going. That's kind of where we were at.
Yeah. Did you know Heavy Trevy was not on Discogs at all until about early last year? Just a Taste popped up. It's never sold before. Like, there's no statistics on that CD. I'm the one that edited the page, so I added the pictures and like any information. But still, Heavy Trevy has no band profile on Discogs. It's Just a Taste, and I don't know how to get the band profile on. It's weird, but I'm the one that did that.
Well, first of all, thank you for that. The fact that, dude, yeah, that's awesome, man. Thank you so much for that. I've been so like, you gotta realize, like, it was a hard cut. I didn't know that we were on Discogs. I didn't know we were on mp3.com. I don't know, like, probably half the stuff that we're on now. So, and you honestly, you probably know just as much as I do, if not more, about where all this stuff has landed. So, to your credit, man, you're the man. You are the man. Thank you so much for making me feel special for a morning here with this podcast. This is pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, okay, so you had interest from some producers that worked with Sublime.
Yeah, Ed and Rob.
So they worked on Just a Taste.
They did not work on Just a Taste. They worked on the demo that was before Just a Taste. So the demo that has Wake Up. So we recorded Later. We recorded Wake Up. We recorded Michelle. And we may have recorded one other song.
There was an early version of Keys.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was an early version of Keys. Yeah. Because I want to say we left that studio with either 4 or 5 songs. And so, okay, so yeah. So here's kind of the story behind working with Rob and Ed Eckstein. As I mentioned, like in our earlier days, we were playing a bunch of house parties. And one of the guys that would come to these house parties was a mutual friend of ours, and his dad was friends with Ed Eckstein. And Ed Eckstein was a nice guy. We met him, and he's like, I want to get you working with, this producer, Rob, out of LA. And we didn't know who Rob was, but they showed us some of the stuff that Rob had recorded, and we're like, oh, this sounds great. And so we agreed to work with them and paid him a very pretty penny to work with them to have the CD, quote unquote, produced. And we did learn some good stuff from working with Rob, from just like from like a musical standpoint, like recording structure, song structure. That's when Michelle changed. So we had the very early version of Michelle, which we recorded at Scott Exum Studio in San Diego. And then we had the second version of Michelle, which is in between that first version and the Just the Taste, that demo, which we recorded with Rob. And that version changed on Michelle, where we put the hook at the beginning of the song instead of at the end of the first chorus. So that's why you do different versions. Is that was Rob's change. So, and I think that was a very smart move. I thought it made the song a lot stronger. And so we paid. I don't want to say this. So we met Ed Eckstein through these mutual friends, and they wanted like $20,000 to record. And it was a big deal. And they wanted 20 grand to record this demo. And the whole, what they sold us on was that we're going to produce the demo, and then Ed Eckstein is going to shop the demo around and see if we can get you guys signed. That is, and because Ed Eckstein had worked on some very big names, we felt like, okay, this is probably a really good opportunity. So our parents basically helped cover the cost of recording that demo. And I got to tell you, man, I was not at all happy with the sound quality and production value of that demo. It was garbage, in my opinion. I probably could have recorded something better myself, maybe. But the good things, the stuff that I think the positives that came out of it was that we did learn a lot from Rob in terms of songwriting, song structure, and how to move things around and where things can make sense, and how things can hit harder earlier, which, is good when you're talking about pop music, even if it's pop punk. So that was a huge benefit, and that's something that we were really happy to learn. But at the same time, bro, not worth $20,000, not even worth half of that. And so, yeah, I think we felt pretty swindled. I think a lot of the guys in the band felt pretty swindled after that whole experience. But that experience and that recording did catch the ear of Brian Newberry, and that then led to the Just a Taste EP or demo, or whatever you want to call it. And so maybe it happened for a reason. But yeah, we worked with those guys, and they were very nice guys. But it was we were young and we were stupid, and we probably should have negotiated a different deal, but we were so excited, I think, at the time. And that's so, like, it's such a cliche story, but it's so true, where you've got young, hungry musicians that want to be successful at, having a music career, and things are starting to go well and, ramp up. And all of a sudden you got people coming out of the woodwork that are like, hey, I can help you. Hey, I can do this for you, but there's a catch. And so for us, it was like, okay, well, if the catch is only 20,000, which saying only 20,000 is still an insane amount of money. Yeah, we left that whole thing pretty bitter, just because the production was so garbage. And I don't think it ever got shopped around. We never got any label interest from Ed Eckstein's connections or anything. So, which was kind of disappointing. It wasn't it was very disappointing. And it's just one of those things we just kind of took as a loss. So we just took the L, and we just kept moving on.
Do you think it was having those guys like on your credit that sort of led to the Scooby Doo thing?
Not necessarily. So the Scooby Doo thing happened. The Scooby Doo thing happened before meeting Brian. And I'll give my former manager, Sandy Stern. I don't know if she'd probably get a kick out of this. But anyways, to her credit, she had a friend or contact at Warner Brothers, and they were looking for, basically they were looking for someone that could do like pop punk singing. And she's like, hey, I'm representing this band. I said, here's the singer. And the producer, the producer liked my voice. And he said, can you make your voice sound a little bit more like Tom DeLonge? And so, yeah, so in that recording, when I sang that song, it's a little bit more nasally. If you really listen to it, I'm a little bit more nasally than how I sing on a lot of the Heavy Trevy stuff. And that's because the music producer wanted a certain sound, like the voice, but wanted a certain sound and style. So I said, okay. So it was this, and honestly, this whole thing like blew my mind when I was like, dude, I'm like 21 years old. I'm about to sing a song on Warner Brothers Scooby Doo, and like I'm just tripping out. I'm like, this is like the greatest thing that has ever happened to me in music, and it was the raddest experience. And I have to give all of the credit to Sandy Stern for getting the whole thing set up and getting me locked in with these guys. So thank you, Sandy. But anyways, uh, I did the producer sent me the song, sent me the lyrics, sent me the music. I played it at home, practiced it a bunch of times, and we got into the studio a few weeks later because it happened pretty quickly. It was like 2 weeks, you got the song. 2 weeks later, I was in the studio recording the song with the producer, and I went through. I laid down the main vocal. Everything was sounding good. And then I said, hey, why don't you let me try? Because I had just worked with Ed Eckstein and I just worked with Rob. So this was like kind of right around at the same time. And so I was like, let me try doing some harmonies. So the harmonies that you hear in the Santa Claus part weren't actually part of the original music that was written. That was something that I added in. I added it in on the spot because I thought it would help the chorus, the Santa Claus chorus emphasis stand out a little bit more, which I think it ended up doing. But yeah, that was kind of like an on the spot, audible, per se, where I was like, hey, can I try something? And he's like, yeah, cool. So, and he ended up liking it. So we kept it in. But yeah, that whole experience is so cool. And to this day, my mom still talks about my Scooby Doo thing and still watches it and still sends me text messages and emails and calls me like, hey, it's on TV right now. It's like, thanks, mom. So it's been a big part of my life since I was, a late teenager, early 20s. And it was just the raddest experience I think I've ever had in music. And I'm very, very lucky to have had that opportunity.
Yeah, me and Kate Tastic just found out about that a few weeks ago, like literally, like it just say Heavy Trevy, so it's not actually the band, it's just you.
Yes. The Chris wasn't involved, Eric wasn't involved. The music writer and producer at Warner Brothers is the one that did it, and he did the whole track, and I mean, I didn't have to do anything just besides sing, and so yeah, but it was kind of a bummer. I was like, oh, I'm not getting, I wish my name would have been on there, but at the same time, it was like, you know what, the fact that I got to do it, that opportunity alone, it's like I don't really care about the other stuff. It wasn't a big deal.
Wasn't there any like bitterness in the band, like, oh, fuck you with your Scooby Doo paycheck?
I'm sure there was. Yeah, I without a doubt, I'm sure there was probably some. Yeah, I'm sure there was. But if there was, they didn't really project it towards me at all, because and honestly, it helped them out too, because number one, it's Heavy Trevy's getting credited for it. Number two, it's their singer, their band singer, that's part of it. That's probably going to add some, could add some help to the band itself. So, but for them not to play it, it's like, yeah, whatever. It's not a big deal. Yeah. But it was cool. I love it, man. I still see it I've got the DVD version of it. I got that for Christmas, the year it came out.
Yeah, I found out about that on IMDb. Heavy Trevy has an IMDb page. I had no idea about it. Apparently, you guys were featured in a Warped Tour DVD in 2002. I have that DVD. I went through the entire thing. You are not in it, but not that I could see anyway, unless you're in the audience somewhere, but you are credited as Heavy Trevy in the Warped Tour 2002 DVD.
That's crazy, dude. I had no idea. I had no idea we were credited for any of that stuff.
It'd be nice if I could find you in there and put a clip in, but there's nothing that I can see. It might be a mistake.
Yeah, I don't think we, unless this is something that Eric and Chris did. I don't recall any conversations about being on a Warped Tour DVD. But I don't know, dude. It happened so long ago. It's very possible that that could have gone down. I don't know, or I don't know. Maybe it was a mistake. Um, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I didn't know any of that. So
Well, Later is clearly the pop punk single. I mean, it's probably the best pop punk song of all time, actually, if you ask me. Do you remember anyone pushing that for radio? Was that why the music video was shot?
for the song Later.
Yeah.
Well, number one, thank you for that. That's a huge compliment. I yeah, man, we wanted our song on the radio. We tried to get our song on the radio constantly, and we got dogged and ignored by our local radio station, and even by they had like this local hour on Sunday where they'd have like a local program where they featured local bands, and we got dogged by them as well, and we got pretty pissed off about it, and so we went after them. And so to answer your question, were we trying to get on the radio? Yeah, we were. We were absolutely trying to get on the radio. The biggest problem that we had was that the hook for our song was a swear word, and that's just impossible to edit and have the same vibe as it being in the song. When it's like you blank it out, or we could have put like a beep there or some type of like funny noise or something, but taking that out of the song, it just ruined the song, just ruined the punchiness of the song. And so I think that's why radio didn't pick it up, to be totally honest with you, is that they weren't going to play hooks, or they weren't going to play hooks that had swear words in them, and that's fine. I mean, I get it. But we certainly tried. We made every effort, and I think that's part of the reason why we recorded Keys, is that Keys doesn't really have any swear words in it, as I recall. And that was a strong enough song that we felt like that could also be on the radio. And so that's why that song was really recorded. It's like, we know we're not going to be able to get Later on the radio. Later's going to do really well, kind of like from an underground perspective, where fans are going to like it, and they're not going to care if it's not on the radio, because they're going to listen to it. And so that was, I think, the mentality that we had is, yeah, this may not hit the way we want it to hit, but it's still going to be popular in the groups of people that are Heavy Trevy fans. They're going to know the song Later, even though they may not hear the song on the radio. They're still going to know it, because if they're listening to us, trust me, they're going to know that song. It's usually the last song. It's usually the biggest song that we play. So long story short, couldn't get it on the radio because of the hook situation, but we did try to get Keys on the radio, and Keys did have some success getting on the radio. I think it did get some spins, but it never really took off. There was never really any push, I think, from the radio station to really get it out there. I will give credit to a guy by the name of Mike Halloran, though. Mike Halloran is San Diego kind of a disc jockey legend. He was really big and influential at 91X, and then later at the station 94.9, and a couple other like, big radio things. And he was the only one that had the balls to play Heavy Trevy. And to this day, I will give him credit for that, because after years of trying to get that song on the radio, or just get Heavy Trevy in general on the radio, and mind you, this is like the local radio show. Like, after years of trying to just get on there, like, he played us. And I don't know if he ever played us after that, but we called him up And after he played the song, it's like, hey, how did it go? Are people calling in? He's like, yeah, everybody's calling in. So he knew, like he knew, but yeah, to his credit, I even to this day, like I'm so thankful and grateful for him that he had the balls to actually play Heavy Trevy, and yeah, I appreciate that so much, because if not, we would have never been on the radio.
So, what was the reason for the later music video? Whose idea was that?
That was I think Brian's. Brian wanted to get a video together as part of our pitch, part of our package to pitch to labels, and so he had worked with the director for our music video on another music video, and so he kind of had all the pieces there. So again, this was a situation where Brian kind of had the vision of like, hey, let's get you guys a music video. It's going to be part of this package that we use to present to the labels and to booking agencies and stuff. And so that's why we recorded later. And that's how it came to be. I was 20, 22, 23 maybe at the time. Yeah, wearing eyeliner, and I think I was wearing a suit. In fact, I think I was wearing. I'm pretty sure I was wearing a suit in that video, wasn't I?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That wasn't even my suit. That was the suit that my dad wore when he got married to my mom. So then, and it made it up. It made it into the later music video. So there you go.
Do we know if that ever got played anywhere?
The music video? No, I don't think it ever made it to MTV or to VH1 or to was it Fuse, or I don't know, whatever the other offshoot of music television was at that time. I want to say most of this was even like pre-YouTube. So there wasn't really a way for us to get it out there besides putting it on our website. And back then, if you wanted to watch a video, you had to like put that video into your website. You couldn't link it, or at least we didn't, it wasn't like it is today where it's so easy to just put stuff up online for people to view. It was really difficult. And if you wanted to watch a video, like you had to hit play and then go, make a sandwich in the kitchen and come back and, it'd still be buffering, so it's like, it's just totally different time. Yeah, the whole concept of the video was the director came in and said, hey, we've got this really hot chick that we're going to kind of like lean into the lyrics of how you want to, it's like a bad breakup. She's cheating on you, but you like her, and we're going to show you this. And I had never met this chick before. In fact, I had a girlfriend at the time. And she was pissed off about that. But anyway, whole different thing. But yeah, it was like, yeah, we did the video, and they had the concept, and like everything was already laid out. And they're like, okay, we're going to focus on the performance shots. So the performance shots were taken at this place called Aubergine in downtown San Diego. And funny enough, Adam was actually Adam, the bass player, was working at Aubergine at that time. And then I later, like a year or two later, I started working at Aubergine. And so yeah, so that where we filmed that is where we were, frankly working at the time. And the guy who owned the place was cool enough to let us shoot there. And we shot, where else did we shoot? We also shot by Canes. So the same place where we did the interview for the documentary. We actually, the part of that video is I think right next to Canes. So it's kind of down in that Mission Valley area, or Mission Beach area. And those were the two main locations. But yeah, it was, I don't know. Looking back on it, it's pretty bad. It's all really bad, and it's all in like probably bad taste, and that's okay. It's that's it was it's a period piece. It's an early 2000s period piece. But that's again, for us, all of these things that we were getting to do was like living out this like crazy fantasy of excitement and getting notoriety and publicity and interest on stuff that we were doing creatively and in music, and that in itself was like that was the win, right? It wasn't necessarily finances, it wasn't the economics of it, it wasn't anything else. It was that we were getting noticed for our music, and that, man, that went a long way. And I think for a lot of bands that getting those opportunities is super rare. And so I think at the time we were all very grateful and thankful, and recognized what just how cool it was to be able to do all that stuff. And even to this day, I mean, I'm in my 40s. Even to this day, I look back and go like, that was a fun time. Those are some rad opportunities, and man, those are memories I would never take back.
Yeah.
He holds the keys to my madness.
Why do you think the band actually fell apart? Was it the fact that, radio wasn't picking you guys up, the video wasn't getting played anywhere, you just felt, why try? Or was it personal shit?
Yeah. So, dude, that great question. It was a little mix of both. So we had gotten to the point where Adam, Mike, Eric, and I, again, this is the second kind of iteration of Heavy Trevy. We were writing, we were constantly writing, constantly practicing. We were practicing probably 4 or 5 days a week, and the writing process for us was pretty slow. And things just kind of felt like they were starting to stall out. And at that point, I was kind of starting to hit more of my mid-20s, and I didn't have an education. I didn't have any like businesses I was going to inherit, or whatever. There's no career path really laid out for me at that point, and I wasn't making any money either with music or with other stuff. I was basically like a waiter or a bartender, and so I was just sick of being fucking poor, and that was a huge motivator for me. And so I was losing a little bit of interest. Songs weren't coming as fast, and probably by 2005, there was a pretty big shift in where pop punk was, and all of a sudden this thing called emo started coming up. And so you would, bands, it was less about pop punk, and it was started to be more about these emo screamo bands, which I fucking hated. I hated all of it, especially the screamo stuff was horrendous. And because remember too, it's like I want to listen to singers. I want to listen to people with good vocal melodies and good voices. I want to hear harmony. I want to hear some musicality, and whatever the genre is, that's what I'm laser focused on, because that's what I enjoy. And so when this other stuff started cropping up, it was like, okay, this is the next wave. You can clearly see that this is happening. Pop punk is starting to kind of fizzle out. I'm at a point where I don't really want to continue doing this unless something like miraculous happens over the next year. And so there was that. And then on top of that, we came into Adam, Mike, and I to practice one day, and Eric's stuff was gone, and he left a note saying that he had left the band and gone to Israel out of fucking nowhere, just nowhere. And it was tough for me personally, because Eric and I had been through a lot together, and it was something that we really built together. And Eric and I would say we were really close. We were good friends and had a lot of different experiences together. And I didn't know what was going on with him, like religiously and stuff like that. Um, but it was, I don't know, it was a kick to the gut because at that point it was I was already kind of deflated. And with Eric just leaving out of nowhere and leaving a note saying, "Hey, by the way, I'm never going to talk to you again." Like that in itself, I was like, all right, I'm done. Like I don't have the grit to keep going. I'm not really getting much out of this. I need to start thinking about my career and what I'm going to be doing for the next 4 to 5 years in terms of like school. Cause then I'm like, bro, then I'm looking at graduating college at 30. It's like, you know, so a lot of stuff at that point in my life where I was like, okay, I've got to make some big decisions here. And so Eric leaving and everything else that was going on, I was like, okay, I think this is done. I think this project is done. And so Adam and I still remained friends after the project. We became roommates. And we both worked at Aubergine together where we shot the music video for later. And so we did that for a couple of years. Mike went off and did some other projects together. I never really kept up with Chris after his departure, and then Jason was, I think at that time, I think he was in LA trying to make it as a session player and as a drummer. And so we all kind of just went on our own paths at that point. So that's how things ended.
So there was a couple of songs that were recorded, I think, while the band was ending. You had like Nosebleed. I think was Little Brother one of those?
Little Brother was one of the first songs we recorded off our first EP in the bedroom. So that first EP was the first song. I can't remember the name of the stars and I seem so bright. There was that song, Don't Complain. Another song that's like and then Little Brother was the fifth song. So there were 5 songs from the original Heavy Trevy EP with the first original members of Heavy Trevy that we recorded in this guy's bedroom. Later was then recorded at Scott Exum's studio a couple months later. And we added that to the first 5-song EP. And also the first 5-song EP included Nothing Like You. And that was, I would say that Nothing Like You, that's kind of the fast one that starts with the bass and the vocals.
I don't think I've heard that.
Oh, dude, I gotta show. Yeah, I'll find some stuff to send you. I think you'll get a trip out of it. So, anyways,
so it was Nosebleed. It was Nosebleed and Fuck You, Heavy Trevy.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. So Nosebleed was recorded at Scott Exum Studio. Fuck You, Heavy Trevy was recorded at Scott Exum Studio.
Worthless Chris.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, Worthless Chris was one of them. Oh, here, let me hold on. I gotta put on my old man glasses. Did you hear the song "Still Waiting"?
No, it doesn't ring a bell.
Okay, so yeah, I've got a bunch of music that you've probably never heard before. So there's a song called "Still Waiting." There's Nosebleed, Worthless Chris, and Fuck You, Heavy Trevy. Do you have, so you've heard Nosebleed, you've heard Worthless Chris. Have you heard these other two?
No, never heard them.
Okay. I'll see if I've got digital copies of them. Yeah, actually, so just, yeah, real quick. So Still Waiting. This is when Adam was in, so this was the last recording that we ever did with Heavy Trevy. This is when Adam and Mike were in the band. And Still Waiting was a song written for Adam's brother, who was, I believe, in Iraq or Afghanistan. So this is like early 2000s, early mid 2000s. and I think he was in the military. So that was a song, and it's an acoustic song written for his brother, which I thought came out really well. And Adam wrote the music to that, and I think Adam and I both wrote the lyrics to that. But I would say that's probably one of my favorite songs that I wrote with those guys was that song. And it was such a departure from anything else that we had written because everything else that we'd written up to that point was like a lot of like just pop punk stuff. So this was like more down my alley in terms of like what I listened to, what I enjoyed singing to, which was probably more on the rock, side of things. So they weren't recorded with Brian at that point because I think where our heads were at, is that we wanted to demo out a few songs to see how they were going to sound before we went and tried to get a label to pay for the studio. So that's kind of where we were at. So we could go record at Scott Exum Studio and get a really good sounding demo of these songs. And I mean, if you look up Scott Exum, you can see like all of the legendary bands that he's worked with in San Diego for the last like 30 years. Yeah. So anyways, but I think that was the last Heavy Trevy recording, was that session. If I recall correctly. I bet you either Eric or Adam would probably know. Yeah, one of those guys will know. I don't remember, to be honest with you. Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay. So the whole like fucking asshole, your daddy's money won't save you now, was that like a reference to like that lawsuit that almost came up over Chris?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was in reference to. Oh man, dude, I love those lyrics. I love those lyrics. I love the melody. I love that whole song. I would say in terms of like if I had to rank my favorite Heavy Trevy songs, that would probably be within the top 3.
Okay. It's nice aggressive song. It totally suited the band as well. I wish the band would have continued, obviously, and just like even kept going to this day. But at some point in 2015, Heavy Trevy came back without you. Did you hear about this? Did you know it was happening?
Yeah. Eric had reached out to me about playing again, and I think I was early on in my public accounting career because I'm a CPA. I do taxes for a living now. So this is it's about as anti-punk rock as you can get, doing tax returns. So, but, but anyways, he did tell me about it. He did tell me he was writing with Chris and they were working together and they were going to record together. And then he showed me some stuff that they had written. And I thought it was great. Honestly, I thought it was fantastic. I thought they reworked the song Don't Complain into a song called 805. And it's way better. In my opinion, it's way better than Don't Complain. And Don't Complain, I think people genuinely liked that when we released it. But Chris changed up the vocal melody, changed up the phrasing and the lyrics and everything else. And it's just a totally different song, but it's a way better song, in my opinion. Then they recorded 2 other original Heavy Trevy songs, very much in the Heavy Trevy style. But they never asked me like, hey, will you come down and sing on these records or on these songs? And frankly, I don't know that I would have, even if they had asked, just because I was so done at that point with anything music. All I wanted to do was just start my career. Tired of being poor. Like, that's the biggest thing. It's like, I don't want to be poor anymore. I want to work my tail off. I want to be successful in my career. This is what I want to do. It's like, if I get caught getting aligned with stuff that should not be on the internet, like this is like during the period of like when people were getting canceled over the dumbest shit. I'm like, bro, I'm not going to risk it to get canceled. I've worked way too hard, to get to this point. So, great songs. They both I would applaud them that they both wrote some or all three of them wrote some really good songs, recorded well. Never got asked to do it. Production quality is fantastic. It's probably better than any recording that any member of Heavy Trevy has ever done. And it's very much in the style of Heavy Trevy. I will tell you though that we did a reunion show in 2022. We played one of our friends from back in high school that was having a 40th birthday party, and we started Heavy Trevy playing house parties at this guy's house, his parents' house, and I mean the craziest like house parties, and just super fun times. And so this guy asked us, would if we would play our, if Heavy Trevy would get back together and play his 40th birthday party, which we did. And I hadn't played, like the four of us had not played together in over 20 years. And once we got back into the room, it was like, this sounds exactly like it did 20 years ago, which was kind of cool. It was pretty memorable, but also the same personalities came out that we had dealt with from 20 years ago. I'm like, I'm not fucking doing this ever again. I'm not doing this again. I don't care whose birthday. I don't care whose bar mitzvah. I don't care what it is. I'm not doing this again. So that was the last time that we played. And I don't know that we'll ever do anything after that. So Matt, Nate, thank you guys. That was fun. Yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time.
So are we still not on good terms with everybody to this day?
I was everybody's kind of on different terms with everybody else. So Jason and I were on great terms. So I mean, I talk to Jason almost every other day, just because we play in that tribute band, our Cree tribute band. But I talk to Eric, here and there. Eric and I are still good friends. Love the guy to death. He's got a lot of stuff going on. And I think he's back. I think he's back in Israel now. So he actually just texted me the other day. So I need to get back to him. But I haven't talked to Adam in years. I haven't talked to Mike in years. And the last time I talked to Chris was when we played our little reunion show at Matt's birthday party in Poway. So that's kind of where things left off. But depending on who you ask, Eric might talk to Chris more. I think they kind of mended their relationship, and got on better footing probably about 10 years ago. So I think they're in a good spot, but I just haven't talked to those other guys as much.
Well, I hope that I can get as many people as possible from this band, really get the full story out from everyone's perspective, That'd be exciting for me.
Man. Oh yeah, dude, absolutely. I'm happy to give you the guys' contact info, and you will definitely get a different perspective, and probably less mentally sporadic responses coming from the other guys, because I'm a little bit all over the place. But the other guys had their own experience with it. The only thing that makes me nervous is like, dude, there's some stuff that, I don't want that stuff getting out on the internet. So it's just,
No, I'm good with that. I'm good with editing.
Like basically, like take the 80s and fast forward to like 2001, and that's the shit that went down. So.
Well, this has been so exciting to talk to you today. I never dreamed that this would ever happen. I never dreamed I'd hear more than like 3 Heavy Trevy songs as well. So all this discovering shit has been really exciting for me.
Hey, dude. No, thank you, man. Jay, this is fantastic. I had such a fun time. Again, like just reliving so many of these stories and memories, and getting to talk to people that are genuinely interested in them is so cool, man. So, and you, dude, you told me stuff about our project, our band that I don't even like, I didn't even know. So, I will work on accumulating all the material that I can. I'll have to reach out to the guys because I think they may have more of those things digitized. But this was, dude, thank you. This was awesome, man. I can't thank you enough for interviewing me and letting me be part of your podcast. Yeah, it's pretty special. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, dude. All right, I'll talk to you soon, brother.
Yeah, see you soon, man.
See you soon. Bye.
Goodbye, fuck you.